You're the managing director of UTCAI?
Yeah, which is called UCAI. Yeah,
UCAI.
yeah,
UCAI. And there's an iconic picture
yeah.
on the website.
Hmm.
Can you talk briefly about not only the picture,
Hmm.
but like how you impact like the local community with everything that you do, and like also as well on a kind of personal level, how actually how like do you feel every time you see that iconic picture on that website?
Mm. Okay, UCAI stands for United to Change and Inspire. The organization was formed, and there are people in our organization was doing things in the community for years anyway. Um, but that moment was a moment that had happened around the Black Lives Matter with George Floyd, who had been brutally murdered in America. And the Black Lives Matter movement was going on and it was creating momentum around the world. And there was an incident that happened in Waterloo on the 13th of July, 2020, where a far right protester they had come down. There's quite a few had come down to London on the proviso of there was a lot of wording that had gone out. This guy called Tommy Robinson, who was the head of the EDL, and literally said, listen, these guys are coming down there, they're damaging our statues, this is happening, we need to go down there and protect our statues and so forth. So there was a lot of hooligans who came down around that period on that day to say they're going to protect these statues, which was already boarded up. So it was more like, okay, if anything kicked off, we're going to kick it off. So anyway, there was one guy, Jermaine Facey, who basically had put a message out on Instagram and Facebook and said, guys, this was happening. Our youth are going to be down in London. The likelihood that we've got all these EDAs coming down. And as fathers, what we need to do is to go down there and just try to be overseers to ensure that none of our children got ourselves into any untowards and so forth. On the back of that call, Lee Russell, Chris Otakito, and Patrick Hutchinson decided, we're just gonna go down there and just see what happens. They got to Waterloo, there's a lot of mayhem and so forth, and they decided, listen, forget this, let's just go back. But on the way, when they're returning back to the station, they'd seen like a scuffle, and then seen one white guy who was basically intoxicated. Fight had kicked off. All his friends had ran off and left him, and he's left by himself. And this guy's like surrounded by about 400 guys who just like, you know what, it's going to kick off now. You know, your races have done what you had to do, and so forth. So in when that had happened, Patrick and the guys was going back, and Patrick, being Patrick, said to himself, "Listen, that's a human being, man. That somebody's there, and we can't afford for anybody, life to be taken. And if their life had been taken, then what impact would it have had on the Black Lives Matter movement? Because George Floyd's life had been taken. This stuff is happening in London. This guy's on the floor, surrounded by a lot of people. We need to do something." So he stepped in, decided to pick the guy up, and guy had collapsed on the stairs. And then his friends that came around kind of protecting him. And because Patrick was kind of the strongest out of all the guys who potentially could pick him up, picked him up, put him over his shoulder, and then marched him off to the police. And the crazy thing about when they marched him off to the police, there's quite a lot of police officers there that had GoPro cameras, right? So they were literally was recording what was going on. And the thing is, they could have intervened if they wanted to, but unfortunately they didn't. So when Patrick had brought him, left him there, they just walked off. But what happened, there was a guy there from Reuters who had taken a photograph. And the next day, bam, that image just kind of went viral. And when it went viral, all the media stations wanted to interview the guys, what was happening and so forth. And I was taken aback by it as well. And I just thought, wow, we can't allow this movement or that moment just to remain static. I knew Jermaine Facey because Jermaine used to play
For
football
Norton.
for Norton.
Yeah.
Yeah, he used to play for Norton Football Club. And
Crazy player.
yeah. And I reached out to Jermaine and said, you know what you guys are doing? And it was like they were just having interviews after interviews. And then I said, you know what? Obviously, this is my bag. I've been doing branding for years, and let's just see what we can do with this moment. And then what happened? He spoke to the rest of the guys. Said, "Yeah, let's get together." Got together, and then there's another guy that I used to work with, Mr. Richard Pasco, who's the founder of Rampage Sound System. So Rampage, he founded Carnival. He was the founder for that, and I'd worked with Richard many years. And I reached out to him and I said, "Listen, I've got this idea, and what I'm planning to do is to take that moment and turn that moment into a movement. What do you think about it?" And at first I said, "Okay, fine. I know the way you work, Troy. I know that you are a perfectionist. I don't know how Richard worked because I'd done work with him before through the entertainment industry. We'd done stuff with Mobos, Shaggy. We did stuff in Germany. We brought people over. So I know the way he works as an artist and how we can do things." And then we met up, went around his house, and I think the original name that the guys that wanted to come up with was Fathers for Change. And we thought, if you put Fathers for Change, you alienate too many people, and it's just going to sound like, it's one of these organization where fathers have got problem, can't see their children, and blah blah blah, and it's that. And I thought, no, let's just think of something. And I remembered, Rich and I, we just sat down and we talked, and then I remembered Obama's inaugural speech, and he said this was not about Black America or white America or Hispanic America. This was about the United States of America. And I thought, yeah, United would be a great name because then it encompasses everybody. And then we thought about what happened on the day, and Patrick rescuing the far right protester, or the other guys as well. I changed the narrative because if he had died, the newspaper the following day would have been completely different. And then we thought, okay, because the narrative was changed, what do we want to do afterwards? And the next step was we wanted to inspire our next generation. So hence the reason UTCAI was created, and the acronym is UTCAI, United to Change and Inspire. And that's how UTCAI came about. And I decided, we came with several ideas because I've been doing branding in terms of what the logos was going to be. Originally, I had the logos with all the guys on there and so forth. And I thought, it's not a strong enough image. The image of him carrying the guy would be a strong enough image. And that was the image that we decided to use as the branding, because instantly you've used that image as the branding, it's instantly recognizable. And within time, you could remove the word UTCAI. It would then become like the night tick. All of a sudden it's like it's correct, it's this and that. So it was when people saw that image, what does that image mean to you? It could mean strength, it could mean brotherhood, it could mean togetherness, it could mean unity, it could mean whatever you need it to be. But it needed to be something that where we're addressing the issues on systemic racism. Systemic racism is a societal issue, and it's something that we need to tackle together. And the brand, I understood that the brand stood for that and it represented that. And that's what I wanted people to see, that even though what happened to George Floyd, we'd made that decision had been made to rescue somebody from a humanitarian point of view. That was important, that, compassion came into this, that somebody's life someone could have lost their life, and that was more important. And sometimes we've gone into schools and schools say, why did you rescue the guy, this and that? And I said, okay, if we hadn't rescued the guy, police had so many cameras around, how many of our Black youth would have been charged for murder if he had died? Because guess what? It's like a group, you're all together. It's not one person. We see it all the time. If a young kid get himself into trouble, it's like if it's 20 of you guys, you're all guilty by association. So hence the reason why having the fathers around was important, that they were there to intervene and kind of just encourage did what they did and just tell some of our youngsters kind of just try and hold it down, even though it was, a traumatic time and, it was heated and there's a lot of stuff which was going on with regards to what Black people are going through. And those challenges are still there. But like I said, hopefully our organization that we've put together and the work that we're doing, which opens up so many doors, we'll just try and make a change. Because again, as I said, it's a collective that needs to tackle this issue. And our strap line, when that happened, I think Patrick had thought about it at the time, and he said, it's everyone versus the racist. And then we kind of changed the wording slightly, and it's like everybody versus racism. So that's a strap line. So it just takes everybody to try and tackle that issue.